to Connections. I'm Stacey Levine-Lavely, and I welcome you to our show. Today, I have a really exciting person. She's been there since the beginning of my journey. That's how long I've known this one. So her and I got together with Karen Polito and Ellen Myers, who was the SPED director here in Shrewsbury. And this was just such an awesome like team. We had come in, there wasn't a SPED pack, it hadn't been there for a long time. And what a SPED pack is a Special Ed Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC, some people call it. And what they do is they basically are making sure that the rights of kids are not being trampled on and things like that. And it's just really important with kids with special needs because we're really their voice. And Paula has been a fierce advocate for so many families over the years. She was my co-chair when we first started the PAC. We started it back up. She was the face because I like to do all the regular work and get everything organized and things like that. And I'm like, here, you stand in front of the camera or in front of the microphone. And I was just not that person. And it's sort of funny, all these years later, here I am. And she now is at Work Inc., which is in Fitchburg. She is the Assistant Vice President of Employment for Fitchburg. And we had the awesome experience, Jagger and I, of being on an Exceptional Lives, I think it was called, panel, and they screened a movie, and the kids talked about different things that they had achieved, and it was Jagger, who all of you know, Liam, who is a fist bump kid from the Bruins, Tucker Collins, which most of you probably in Shrewsbury know because he is the mayor, I think, and Jordan, who also, her mom Cheryl was on the show a few episodes ago. And it was just such an exciting thing to see all these kids who are, getting towards that adult age and learning about work, going on, job interviews, resumes, actually working. And Paula is just like such an advocate for these kids to really find things that are important for them. So I want to welcome to our show, Paula Collins. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I am just like so excited. So tell me a little bit more about Work Inc. and what you do there.
Sure. So Work Inc. is a Boston-based, actually, company. We run programs for people with special needs, from day programs to employment. We also own a number of residential homes on the South Shore in Boston. And in Fitchburg, we focus completely on employment. I have a team of 6 who focus on helping anybody who has any kind of barrier to work. So we work primarily on contracts from the state with Department of Developmental Services, Department of Transitional Assistance, and Mass Rehab. And we help people get the skills. And then we also do some job coaching on site. We help them soup to nuts, really. But we also work with a high school group in what we call our pre-ETS program. We cover 10 schools out here. 12 actually, because 2 of them have 18 to 22 programs that are separate. And we work with the kids on everything from self-advocacy to work readiness skills. We do career exploration. We want to make sure that if a student at the end of their career says, I really want to bag groceries, it's because they really want to bag groceries and not because it's the only choice they think they have in life or the only thing they've ever been exposed to. And we do have a number of people who work at Market Basket. They've been an incredible employer out here for us in North Central in a number of different roles too. They're not all up front, but we want to make sure that if somebody wants to do that, it's because that's what they want to do. And we do have some guys that are also mayors, like my guy, that love that up front because they get to see people every day and talk to them and know all the regulars. But yeah, it's about making sure people have choices and they understand the choices and can advocate for themselves, because that's another big thing. A lot of people with special needs have been being told what to do since the time they were little. You need to go here, here's your schedule, you're going to do this and do that. And they haven't made choices for themselves. So to be able to make choices for themselves and say, hey, this is what I really like, and this is what I'm interested in, this is what's going to get me up in the morning, is very different for them.
Oh, absolutely. And so many people are, especially like my son, for example, is so prompt dependent and he's always like checking in, checking in, checking in. And, like you said, if that's what lights people up as far as whatever they want to do, I just remember like in the beginning, people were like, oh, we could go after Target. He could go to Target and go after carts or something. And I'm like, Jack, who would run away? He would not come back. I mean, that would just be the thing, even though the expectation's there, unless he has someone right on top of him doing
Well, I
that.
mean, let's think about getting carts in a parking lot, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things involved there that you're not thinking about
Yeah.
because you're thinking, oh, he can do that task. It's an easy task. And you get the cart, you come back. Oh, no, 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 no. You have to make sure you're paying attention to where are the other cars, where, how to, moving a big, long stack of carriages is not easy
Mhm.
physically.
Yep.
So you have to physically be up for that. You have to know safety for sure, because as we all know, as drivers, people aren't paying attention enough.
No.
Right? They are not paying attention.
Yeah.
They're on their
Yeah.
phones, they're talking to their kids, they're stressed out because they just got the stuff for dinner and they need to get home. So there's a lot that goes into that is
Absolutely.
not really quite as simple as you might think. And
Mhm.
the task. So I think that's the thing. One of the first things that's important when you think about employment is that it's not just about the task, it's also about the environment. So when I look for a job, I want to know, do I like these people? Do they seem like people that I'm going to get along? Because I'm going to spend a lot of time with them, probably more time than my family at this point, right?
Mhm.
And so I want to like them. I want to like what I'm doing. I want to be excited to go there. So I always make when I said get somebody ready for an interview, the first thing I say to them is it's a two-way street. And they say, what do you mean? I need the job. I'm like, right, but you're interviewing them as well, because you're going to give them your time and your uniqueness, right? So if you're going to do that, you should be interviewing them as well to see, like, what do you think about them as much as what do they think about you? And it also takes the pressure off the
Absolutely.
interview to do that. The pressure is not so much like, oh, are they going to like me? Am I going to be okay? It's kind of like, no, do I like them enough to give up to do this or not? And then you're way less stressed about it.
And you empower them because now they know that they have a choice. It's not something that someone said years ago to your family at an IEP meeting or, along the way or what have you. And they're really making those choices. And that's such a huge piece that they're able to, make choices for themselves because it's like, what makes you happy? You said it, I know a while ago, like what gets you out of bed. So expand on that.
Well, I think the other thing you just brought up when you said that was that when you're interviewing too, you're thinking about what are my skills and what am I bringing to the table and how am I going to say that. But for a lot of people with special needs, they've never had to interview. They say, I'd really like a job at Burger King, and their job coach goes to Burger King, talks to the Burger King manager, says, hey, can we work this out? Is there a way to do this? We
Mhm.
never say, can you do me a favor? And because then you're already setting them up as special. Whereas I go in and say, I have this person that's amazing for you. Do you want them, or am I going to McDonald's with them? Like I never say, oh, could you help them out? Just maybe give them 10 hours, whatever, because I'm not asking for anything special. I'm giving you a person who can do the job, who's going to be excited to show up for work, right? So all those things are part of how you're presenting as a job coach when you come in. And then
Mhm.
also, but for them, it's very different when they actually have to interview because they're so used to saying, I want to work here. Somebody goes and makes it happen, and then I just show up. So
Right.
that's also empowering to be like, wait, you have to earn it still. This isn't a guarantee. You have to go in there and do it. And we just
Mhm.
recently had somebody that did that with CBS. They want to be in the pharmacy tech program, which CBS has a great program for people with special needs. But out by us, there are very few positions, so it's really competitive. And he was like, yeah, I don't really want to work that much. And they were like, okay, bye, because we need somebody that can work at least 30 hours a week. So, but when you're talking about finding what gets you up in the morning, you're
Mhm.
talking about really changing a mindset, which is really tough to do for parents and students. And when you're 13, 14, 15, and for all those years previous, everybody's been focusing on your IEPs of what the deficit is, right? This
Mhm.
person needs to still work on this or that. They can't do this, they can't do that. So you are already in that mindset. You need to turn the dial to say, wait a minute, but over here, I can do all of this already. So yeah, these things are what I call my conditions for success. In other words, like maybe I need to work in a quiet environment. Maybe I can't work where things move really quickly. Maybe I need a repetitive job. Those are conditions for success. So we as job coaches need to look for jobs that fit those conditions and then really focus on the skills instead. So that's a big shift, a big shift. But you as a parent can start that by right now, today, when you go to your IEP meeting, I don't care if you're 5 or 14 or 3, saying, bringing things that your child does, your student does that's successful. So what I used to always do in my meetings at the beginning of the school year, I would ask to meet with the teacher before school started, that I know you have what he is on paper. Let me show you who he is as a person. Here's a photo album of our summer and what we did this summer. My kid has been to over 20 states in the union. He has shot pictures in Portugal and Washington, D.C. And, he's been all over. So I know on paper, he maybe can't stay in a room without somebody paying attention, or he's going to bolt out the door if he's bored, but he's traveled all over the world. So he has some really great skills. He can maneuver on his phone to find anything that he wants. If I want to know what actor worked in 6 different movies, he can list all the movies that actor's been in. There are skills that he has that you need to understand as a teacher, because one, if you know he's a movie head and you're trying to motivate him to do something, talking about a movie might be the thing that gets you to the next place, right? But it also starts you to think about him as a person first. We keep talking about person first language, right? Yeah. But you have to present that as well. As a parent, you have to present them as a person first. And I know you see that he has all this stuff, but this is what he does at home in his real life. These are who his friends are. He can kneeboard. He's the best spotter that we have. He knows how to get around the lake without hitting rocks. There's all these things that he has as skills that aren't necessarily skills other people have.
They're not necessarily things that maybe typical situation as far as employment goes, that they're going to ask you, can you do these things? But that's what makes him interesting. That's what makes him unique. And then he can take those skills, because they're problem solving and things like that, and apply them into that. So by showing that and being mindful of that, I agree with you 100%. And one of the things as parents that we can do is also the vision statement is so critical. And so frequently we turn it over to the school to make that for us. Oh, no. And in reality, dream big. Like if your kid loves, like my son loves video, he would love, no matter what he was doing, to be in Disney World somehow, some way. And he could probably care less if he was sweeping the street, but why not start as a videographer or something like that?
We got grief. My vision statement never changed. My vision statement from day one was for him to work his way out of needing services, period. Mm-hmm. And I got grief for it every single year. And every single year, I said the same thing. That's what we're shooting for. If he doesn't get there, that's fine. That's why it's called a vision statement. Our vision for him is to work his way out of services and to find something to do where he's not dependent on who is funding what, or where the funding happens to be at the time, but is dependent on what he wants to do and his own making a living, right? So that, and it's doable. It maybe he reaches it, maybe he doesn't. But if we are instead saying, we're going to just make sure he can just get dressed and he'll always have someone to help him, then we're not going to attempt anything else. We're just going to be like, all right, that's the goal. So he's never going to get there. We started his own photography business page online for him when he was 14. Because we found that he had a talent. He then got off it, but by the time he was right up graduation, he was like, I don't really want to do that as a job. I really want to do it for fun. And I want to instead work in a kitchen. And we were like, all right, well, that's way easier, right? Because there's a lot of different jobs in the kitchen. But I found even then, when I would go to talk to places about him working in the kitchen, they're like, well, he can clean the tables. I'm like, no, you're not hearing me. He doesn't want to clean tables. He's a terrible cleaner, first of all. I wouldn't have him clean the tables if I were you. But he wants to actually prep food. He wants to work in the kitchen. Like, well, it's really fast paced. Like, that's what he likes. Because if he's bored, he will take off and he'll find something else to do. He likes a kitchen that's crazy. The running around, the yelling, the whoa, all that nuttiness that goes behind, happens in a commercial kitchen. That's what he likes. So that's what we're looking for. Now he's changed his mind again. And now we're back to photography and maybe movies, and he's not really sure exactly what he wants to do. But you have to be listening. You have to be paying attention to what they're doing right, which can be really hard, especially if you have someone who's behavioral. It's really hard to look beyond those behaviors and be like, wait, how did he just manipulate the entire family? Wait, that's a skill. That's a skill. He just figured out how to get every single one of us to do what he wanted instead of what we wanted. How did that just work? And we didn't even know what happened. I know for my guy, he's the greatest people reader I know. He can assess somebody in less than 30 seconds. That's a skill. That's a huge skill. So how do we then make it work, right? So to me, the transition is all about listening. It's about going from can't to can and listen, pay attention to the little details and start to write them down. Stupid things. He can brush his own teeth. He gets himself dressed. He understands the difference of whether he needs a coat or shorts. Whatever. She is constantly drawing, whether it's good or bad. Like, okay, well, that's obviously an area of interest. How would we use that? We have 16 remotes and she knows how to use all of them. I don't. Right? I found that, she's overwhelmed in a Zoom call of 10 people, but a one-on-one Zoom call, she does great. Okay. And when we talk about work, I think the other thing that's interesting with people with disabilities is we think they're going to do it forever. I'm not even close to doing what I was supposed to do when I was 18, what I wanted to do when I was 18. So why did they have to have it figured out? And so maybe we think about those steps. Jagger's really into video. So he wants to be a video tester. But before he can be a video tester, he has to be able to follow direction in what do the video they want versus the video he wants, right? So maybe that's his first thing is maybe he's working, in a production studio, organizing the files. Who knows? But you get him in the environment he wants to be in, not necessarily doing the job he wants to be in, and make those steps in that direction. So that's the other thing that I think we need to really think about that I think a lot of times gets lost in the shuffle.
I agree with you. And especially when you're dealing with entry level and things like that, like most people say, I want to be this. And they're looking at that top echelon of where they want to be and not understanding that people have to take small baby steps. And I love how you said that because I think it's true of anybody. I mean, I remember at 17 years old, my family saying, what do you want to do the rest of your life? Oh, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to be, I want to go to school for sports medicine. Well, I didn't realize it. I didn't like the sight of blood. That was a big problem. So I had to switch over to business management. And, that's very generic and what have you. And I can do anything with it. But the thing was, at that age, not many people know what they want to do at 17 or 18 years old. So like you said, it's the same thing with special needs. You're dealing with the same thing. And sometimes it's even more so because they're seeing the end result. Like, for example, with Tucker, he might want to be a chef. Well, you're not going to go into a kitchen and become the chef unless mom or dad or you own the restaurant. Right. That's not going to happen. I mean, again, baby steps, and going through that process. And how are you going to get in there? And like you said, going back, and I want to talk about the interview processes and things like that, is you're going to have to convince somebody that you can do it. And especially when you have any kind of disability, they're looking at the reasons to discount you despite EOE and things like that. They're kind of looking to going, oh, I don't know, I'm going to have to do this if I hire someone and yada, yada, yada. I mean, you've heard all the excuses.
And that's part of it is, we have to be ready with that case, right? So we may know that the person is never going to interview well, but we know they can do the job, right? So maybe we do a little video clip and we send that over to the employer of them doing a similar task. Maybe we have a visual resume instead of a paper resume. A visual resume is basically a PowerPoint presentation that tells you your experience, but it has photos in there showing the person being successful. Because what happens, frankly, a lot of the times is the person may not have interviewed you, may not have ever met anybody with your kind of disability. And so their fear is rooted somewhere that doesn't even make sense. They're worried about something that isn't even a thing. Right. They may be saying, well, if he has Down syndrome, then he couldn't possibly know this. I'm like, he does it every day. Or it could be, he has autism. I know this other guy with autism that blah, 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 blah. Okay,
Mhm.
well, they're two different people. So that's not necessarily true. And this is, we had a guy that could barely interview, but he was an incredible craftsman. And his workshop in his house was immaculate with every single tool in its place. And he was doing these teeny tiny little, like, ship in a bottle things.
Oh,
But if you
cool.
met him, you would never have thought he could do that. So his visual resume and the video showed him doing it. And then we went to this, workshop, this craft place, and they were like, oh, yeah, we'd hire him in a second. That's what he's doing at all? No problem. And they dealt with the other pieces of it that they had to kind of learn to make it work. And it's your job as a job coach is really a lot of educating. It's a lot of educating people of like, listen, I get it. I hear what you're saying, but this guy will be here every day. He's not going to call in sick. He's going to be excited about coming to work. And he's going to, be a great employee, but the first 30 days could be a little painful, right? Or it could be, there's some bumps just of him getting the routine. And I keep saying him just because I live in the house of boys, not because
I hear you.
girls aren't working. I'm hearing it in myself and like,
Yeah, and I love that idea of actually showing what they can do, because again, it goes back to the can versus can, and really taking stock of what excites your child or your adult. It's just so weird to say that,
I know.
I'm kind of like, wow, he's not a child anymore. But I think that's really important just because, like I remember Jagger years and years ago, he used to love to string like those wooden beads. And, it was one of those things I'd watch it, and it was a thing that he liked to do. So I had him earn stringing beads. So it's like sometimes you have to shift and kind of make the positive actually what they're working for and things like that. And I think, like you said, noticing things your kids do, like they can make an egg omelet or they make the best brownies in the world. Why don't we go to a bakery, And I love that show. I mean,
Well,
to
it
me,
may not even be a bakery. It might be though, if they can follow a recipe, they can follow directions, right? I mean, steps, right?
Yeah, it opens so much out.
It may be that they like cooking because they use a cookbook that has pictures in it. So they just need a visual schedule. It could be as simple as that. I think the other thing is for employers to understand is that when we talk about accommodations, most of the time it doesn't cost any money.
Yeah.
95% of the time it's under $500 and probably could be funded by an agency that works with this person to say, oh, we'll provide them with what they need. It usually, when you talk about an accommodation, usually it's something that simple. Like, hey, when this person comes into the time clock, they just need a little visual image there of the steps so they can remember them. Or they're going to carry around their phone because it has an app in it that lets them do whatever. Identify money or whatever, whatever the skill is that they need because they use this tool. So it's not this big scary thing, which I think is what people think of. Because a lot of times still today, which is kind of shocking to me, when you say somebody has a disability, people think physical. I've had so many
automatically,
so many people say to me when I call for a job, somebody for a job, and I say, hey, I've got this great candidate, but they have a disability, and they'll be like, oh, there's a lot of heavy lifting. Okay, well, he's 6'4" and is perfectly capable. 90. Well, else was your point? And it's really funny, but not funny. So I think part of it is really just kind of talking through what the person's fear is. I mean, I worked at the Commission for the Blind for a short time. And when I was helping people who were blind, people immediately were like, I think in their head, people go, I could never do that. That was me. I couldn't do it. And so they're projecting. I'm like, I know, but this person does do it. And they do it every day. And they have their systems and they're amazing. And I'm telling you, you want them to work for you. And then they go, oh, really? They can do that? How's she do that? Or how's he do that? And you're like, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, you just need to get out of your head of what you would do and how you would feel because it's not you. And sometimes that's the block. And that's really what you're kind of digging for as a job coach or as a job developer, is you're really digging for the like, But then there's also customized employment, which is you figure out what the person's skill is, and then you go find somebody that needs that. It could be as simple as a store that everything needs to be folded in, right? And I have a person that's completely OCD, and all they love to do all day is fold. I hate to fold. If I owned a store, I'd be like, I'll hire that person just to fold my stuff. I'll work with the customers all day, but I am not folding. I hate it. I can do it, but I hate it, right? So why wouldn't I take that off of me and free me up to work with customers and sell more? Because this other person could just be back there folding all day long and be perfectly happy. That's sort of how customized employment works. I heard a story of this company that had a terrible OSHA rating because they worked in plastics, and every time the plastic was being cut off the machines, somebody was falling on it. And they had this agency had a kid who just wanted to sweep. Perfect. So they went around sweeping everything up at the end of the machines so that the machine operators could just keep moving. Not only did their insurance fall in their rates so far that it more than paid for this person's salary, right? Awesome. This person was doing a skill that they could do, and it served this great purpose in this company, and also ended up as a side benefit increasing the morale of everybody in the place, because this person was really fun and funny, and everybody looked forward to this person coming around to them and when they're sleeping. So that's the kind of thing that can make a huge difference. It doesn't seem like a lot, but in your company, if you have a higher paid person doing one single task that maybe is costing them a lot of time, it's not cost efficient. Pay somebody minimum wage for 3 or 4 hours a week to come in and take that off your plate. That makes way more sense fiscally for your company. So those are just a couple of little examples of ways that you can customize employment to make a big difference in the company, and obviously a huge difference in that person's life, right?
Definitely. Now, when you're talking about that, as they're going through the interview process and things like that, how have you guys had to shift due to COVID to create opportunities for them still to do interviews and things like that?
Well, in some ways it's been better, in some ways worse, right? Because if it's a Zoom call, you can be there. I've actually been in the room while they've been on, it's at my 6 feet distance with my mask, right? But like prompting, or like talk about blah, blah. But it can be really tough for them to do because they're looking to you, and it's obviously that you're there, or they're or in some cases, if the employer already knows, you're literally on the call. So you can prompt them to say, oh, hey, Stacey, remember when you did, well, talk about that a little bit. I think that's what the kind of thing he's looking to hear. Or you can, prompt. For us, it's been really great in our high school programs because we run this pre-employment transition program that we have had a hard time getting students to engage in some cases because they don't want to be stigmatized as having a disability. And that could be somebody who's dyslexic or has a processing disorder that maybe not all their friends know. That's sort of really going to prevent them, though, and affects their self-esteem and being able to, again, that advocating for yourself, that self-advocacy piece. We could train that till the cows come home. They would still need it because they're just not used to doing it. They're not used to having to do it. They're not confident. They maybe don't have the articulation to say what they want to say. Maybe it's hard for them to string all that together in the moment and sort of stick up for themselves. All those things are things we work on, but we've been able to do it via Zoom class, which means no one knows you're there except the people in class. So we've done two things. We've mixed schools, which has been awesome, because for a lot of these kids, their world is really small, and their world may be their neighborhood. Maybe it's their high school, but it's pretty small. So to meet people from other towns or cities or other high schools and it's just broadening them just a little bit more. So it's been really great. It's also great because we've had a couple of students that live way, way out. We cover North Central, which is basically Route 2. Segment of Route 2 that is pretty isolating, and there's a lot of small schools, really rural. And we had one student that was physically handicapped, and she couldn't make it to class in our office because we do classes after school in our office, typically pre-COVID. And it was tough for us to justify going all the way out there for one student when we typically work in small groups in this program. But since we've been in COVID and online, she's been in all these great classes and is really engaged and has got some great skills. So there's been for us, a lot of advantage. And, working has been tough because we're constantly, with our population, a lot of them are at risk. So we've had to kind of back up a little bit to say, okay, let's take this time to really work on some skills. Let's take this time to think about what you really want to do. Let's explore more things. We are working with a company called Virtual Job Shadow that is incredible. You can go onto this website and watch videos of people doing work. There's interviews of different people from different companies and avenues talking about soft skills, work soft skills. There's people who there's that one guy, my favorite video was a guy that was talking about how his disability is an advantage, and he's an amputee and he has a metal claw and he works with something that's really hot. And so he was like, everyone else is slower because they're constantly worrying about getting burned, but I don't have that problem. And so my speed is faster because I'm just picking it up and going. And it was, and he was very cool. He was like, he was kind of a very, guy's guy. And he was just, the way that he said it was really funny, of like, I don't worry about that because I have this advantage. And really, I thought it was awesome for kids to see, because he's really looking at it in such a great way, instead of being like, well, I have this problem and I don't know if I can get a job. Instead, he's like, oh, I went in there and said, hey, this is what I can do. And that's really what we want to do. We really want to get them excited about work. We want them to look at different possibilities. The cool thing in that website is you can also explore colleges and post-secondary opportunities. So if I say, oh, I want to be a welder, it will say, oh, here's a guy welding. Go check him out, see what that looks like to actually work the job. Mm-hmm. And then here's the education you need to be a welder. Here's the places you can go to get it. Here's how much they cost. Here's the scholarships they do or do not offer.
Wow.
And then let you compare. It's really, really intense. It's been really cool. So we've also had a lot of students who are kind of overwhelmed with Zoom and not up for the hour-long calls. Yeah. That we just assign an assignment with them in that program and say, hey, this is your assignment for this week, is to narrow down to 3 things that look interesting to you and come back. And they do the work independently and then come back, and we do like a 45-minute session where they come back and talk to us about what they saw and what they liked, and they compare notes.
That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's so cool because then it does give you like a jump off point of seeing like how much it's going to cost, things like that. And, if a lot of times I think people just like, they see something and like, oh, that looks like a really cool job. But then when they really get into the nitty gritty and they see what the training looks like, and whether it's a lot of stuff or a little bit of stuff, or if you like it, but you're not really creative, it's probably not going to be a good fit for you. And I think that really kind of opens that up for both the parents and the kids to have that dialogue and to really be able to talk about what the skill set is, and, realistically be able to say, okay, these are going to be jobs you're targeting. Because at the same time, you don't want to set the kid up for things that they definitely aren't going to be able to attain. And then you're dealing with that rejection piece, which can be very difficult for, these populations and things like that. So I think the work you're doing is amazing. And I definitely want to invite you back to talk about more stuff, because this has just been such an awesome, sorry, I only have a half hour, but it's such awesome information, and you are just so knee deep in it. And I can't wait to talk to you as, COVID's kind of, in our rear view, and we can really chat about, like, you've been opened up now, what are you doing with the steps you're taking now in that research and all those things you're doing that are, building the foundation for the kids and everything, and really kind of looking at it down the road. So I definitely invite you back, and I look forward to that, because you're just always such an amazing, like, font of knowledge. But you really are, and you're so wonderful at your job. And, I've been able to see you in action. Your staff loves you to death, and it's just amazing what you're doing. So thank you for that, and thank you for coming and visiting with me today.
Thanks for having me. We're always happy to talk about work.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. Okay, everyone. Hope everyone has a fantastic month, and let's keep unity in the community. Take care. Bye.